At the heart of the Roman world, an empire built on the backs of slaves faced its greatest challenge.
In the 1st century before Christ, the Roman Republic believed it was untouchable. Its armies stretched from Spain to Greece. Its generals marched in triumph. Its senators ruled from marble halls in the heart of Rome. But beneath this glory, another world existed.
A world of chains and collars.
Of men and women sold in busy markets. Of backs bent on farms. Lungs burning in mines. And blood spilled for entertainment in the arena.
From this hidden world came a man whose name should have vanished. He owned no land, wrote no books, and never held office in Rome.
Yet more than 2,000 years later, his story is still told across the world.
His name is Spartacus.
Between 73 and 71 BC, Spartacus led one of the most dangerous slave uprisings in Roman history in the Third Servile War. What began as a desperate escape from a gladiator school in Capua grew into a full-scale conflict that forced Rome to send its strongest legions and its most ambitious commanders. You will walk through the real world of Spartacus and the dust of the arena.
The hunger of the camps, and the hard decisions that could mean life or death. You will discover who he was before slavery.
How a few desperate gladiators became a marching army.
See how they broke Roman lines again and again.
Rome's world of chains. To understand Spartacus, you must first understand Rome. By the 1st century BC, the Roman Republic dominated the Mediterranean. Its victories had brought in huge numbers of captives from Greece, Carthage, Spain, Gaul, and the eastern kingdoms, and those captives were turned into slaves. Slavery was not a side feature of Roman life. It was at the core of the economy. Slaves worked on large estates in Italy, labored in dangerous mines, served wealthy families in their townhouses, and fought as gladiators for public entertainment. Legally, a slave was property, not a person. A master could punish, sell, or even kill a slave with little fear of serious punishment. This system created huge tension. A small elite enjoyed comfort and luxury, while millions of enslaved people did the hardest work with almost no rights. Earlier in the century, large slave uprisings had already broken out in Sicily, the First and Second Servile Wars, showing how explosive this system could become. By 73 BC, Italy was full of people who had lost their homes and freedom to Rome's conquests. Many of them spoke different languages, worshipped different gods, and carried deep anger inside. All they lacked was a leader and an opportunity. Spartacus would become that leader, and Capua would become the place where opportunity appeared. Ancient writers agree on one thing: Spartacus was not Italian and not Roman by birth. Most sources say he was from Thrace, a rugged region north and east of Greece, in what is now parts of Bulgaria and the Balkans. Thracians had a reputation among Romans as hard fighters, used to rough terrain and constant tribal warfare. Before he became a slave, Spartacus likely served as a soldier. Some accounts suggest he fought in auxiliary units under Roman command, then either deserted or was captured. At some point, he fell into Roman hands and was sold into slavery, a common fate for prisoners of war in that era. Because of his physical strength and combat ability, he was sent to a gladiator school in Capua. There, under Alanista, a gladiator trainer and owner, Spartacus and other slaves were turned into professional fighters. They lived inside a strict, enclosed compound trained every day with weapons, and were prepared to risk their lives for the entertainment of Roman crowds. One ancient author mentions that Spartacus had a Thracian wife or partner who was believed to have prophetic visions. She supposedly claimed that Spartacus was destined for great and terrible things. Whether or not that detail is fully accurate, it shows that even ancient readers saw him as a figure marked by fate, not just another anonymous slave. The escape from Capua 73 BC. In 73 BC, the turning point came. Inside the Gladiator school at Capua, a group of fighters decided that they would no longer wait to die in the arena. They planned an escape involving perhaps around 200 men, but only about 70 to 80 managed to break out when the plan was discovered early. Armed at first with simple tools and whatever they could grab from the kitchens, they fought their way past the guards. Then they struck real fortune. They captured wagons carrying gladiatorial weapons, swords, shields, helmets meant for upcoming games. With those weapons in hand, these slaves were no longer just runaways. They were armed rebels. Spartacus quickly emerged as one of the key leaders, alongside other gladiators like Crixus and Enemaus. The rebels left Capua and moved toward Mount Vesuvius, using the steep slopes and rough terrain as a natural fortress. Local Roman forces were sent to trap and starve them out, confident that a small band of slaves would not be a serious challenge. But Spartacus and his comrades used creativity instead of brute force. They are said to have climbed down a steep side of the mountain using ropes made from vines, circling behind the Roman camp and attacking it from the rear. The result was a shocking victory. The Roman detachment was defeated, their equipment taken, and their confidence shattered. That single victory transformed the rebels from a desperate group of escapees into the core of a growing army. News of their success began to spread through the countryside. After the victory near Vesuvius, everything changed. Rumors spread across southern Italy that slaves had defeated Roman soldiers. Runaways from farms, shepherds from the hills, and other desperate people began to join Spartacus and his followers in growing numbers. Within months, the rebel group expanded from a few dozen fighters into a force of thousands. Ancient sources later claimed that at its height, Spartacus's army may have reached around 70,000 or more, though exact numbers are uncertain. What is clear is that this was no longer a small band. It was a moving community, men, women, and children, all depending on the army for protection and survival. Spartacus used the winter of 73 to 72 BC to train and organize his forces. They raided towns like Nola, Nuceria, Thurii, and Metaponum, seizing weapons, armor, animals, and supplies. Over time, what began as a loose crowd started to function more like a real army, with leaders, scouts, and planned movements. But this growth brought new difficulties. Not everyone in the rebel ranks shared the same goal. Some wanted revenge on masters, some wanted loot, some wanted to escape Italy entirely, and some simply followed the strongest leader they could find, keeping discipline. Preventing chaos and steering such a mixed group would test Spartacus's leadership constantly. Rome finally takes notice. At first, Roman leaders underestimated the crisis. They treated the revolt like a local disturbance, sending smaller forces that were not well coordinated. Those units were beaten in turn, damaging Rome's pride and emboldening the rebels. Eventually, the Senate understood that this was not just a band of outlaws. A large, mobile army of slaves and poor free people was operating inside Italy. Close to the heart of Roman power, if left unchecked, the revolt could spread further and even inspire uprisings elsewhere. Consular armies led by high-ranking magistrates were then sent to crush Spartacus. One Roman commander, Gellius, managed to defeat a part of the rebel force under Crixus near Mount Garganus, where Crixus was killed. This was a painful blow to the rebels, especially to those Gaulish fighters who had followed Crixus. But when the consuls tried to corner Spartacus himself, the results were disastrous for Rome. Spartacus defeated the army of Lentulus and then turned to beat Gellius's force as well, reversing Rome's brief success. Each victory fed the legend and drew more attention from terrified landowners and angry senators. For the first time, Rome had to accept an uncomfortable reality. Its legions could be beaten by people it called property. With Roman pride wounded and earlier commanders failing, the Senate turned to Marcus Licinius Crassus. Crassus was one of the richest men in Rome, ambitious and eager for military glory to match his wealth. He was given command of several legions and the main responsibility for ending the rebellion. Crassus imposed brutal discipline on his troops. He reportedly revived the ancient punishment of decimation in units that had shown cowardice, executing 1 in every 10 soldiers to terrify the rest into obedience. Under his harsh control, the Roman legions became more disciplined and more determined not to break against Spartacus. When Spartacus and his army moved into the southern region of Bruttium, Crassus decided not just to chase them but to trap them. He built a long line of fortifications, ditches, walls, and obstacles across the narrow width of the peninsula, trying to seal the rebels in and cut them off from supplies. For the rebel army, life became harder. Food grew scarce, movement was restricted, and pressure increased from both Roman arms and the geography itself. The war was entering its final and most desperate phase. In this tight situation, Spartacus looked for a new path. One bold plan was to cross the narrow sea to Sicily, an island that had already seen major slave revolts in the past. From there, he might restart the war with new recruits and better supplies. According to ancient writers, Spartacus tried to make an agreement with Cilician pirates. They were supposed to ferry some of his forces from the Italian mainland across to Sicily. If successful, the rebels could have gained a new base and possibly set off a much larger uprising on the island. But this plan failed. The pirates either betrayed the deal, took payment and left, or were simply unreliable and never returned. Spartacus and his people remained stuck in southern Italy, still trapped between Crassus's fortifications and the sea. This failed crossing is one of the most tragic what-if moments in the story. Had Spartacus reached Sicily with a strong force, the war might have dragged on much longer and caused even greater fear in Rome. Instead, the rebels found themselves once again facing the full weight of the Roman legions on Italian soil. As 71 BC unfolded, the war reached its climax. Crassus's legions pushed relentlessly, winning several engagements and forcing Spartacus to retreat deeper into the south. The once massive rebel army was now under constant pressure, low on options and space to maneuver. Some rebel groups broke away under leaders like Gannicus and Castus. Crassus seized his chance, attacking these separated forces and defeating them, killing many thousands. Every lost battle reduced Spartacus's strength and made the final outcome more likely. Meanwhile, another powerful Roman, Pompey, was returning to Italy from campaigns in Spain. Although he did not fight in the main battles against Spartacus, his presence in the north meant that if the rebels tried to break out of the south, they risked being trapped between Crassus from below and Pompey from above. Ancient accounts suggest that Spartacus may have tried to negotiate with Crassus, perhaps hoping for some form of mercy for his people. Crassus refused. He wanted a total and visible victory. The stage was set for the final showdown, the last battle and the fall of Spartacus. The final battle took place somewhere in the region of Lucania in southern Italy. Details differ among ancient sources, but they agree that Spartacus and his remaining followers faced Crassus's legions in a last, desperate stand. Spartacus is said to have tried to reach Crassus personally in the fighting, cutting down Roman soldiers as he advanced, but he was overwhelmed and killed in the chaos. His body was never definitively identified, which only deepened the mystery and legend surrounding his death. The rebel army collapsed. Those who were not killed on the battlefield were captured. The Third Servile War, which had shaken Italy for years, was finally over. Rome answered the revolt with brutal symbolism. Crassus ordered around 6,000 captured rebels to be crucified along the Appian Way, the major road connecting southern Italy to Rome, 4 miles. Wooden crosses lined the route, each bearing a dying or dead rebel, a living warning to anyone who might consider another uprising. Pompey, arriving later, defeated smaller groups of escaping rebels and claimed in a letter that while Crassus had beaten the main army, he had finished the war. This rivalry for credit would shape their political competition in the years ahead. The revolt did not bring down the Republic. Slavery continued to be central in Rome for centuries more. But the memory of the uprising left a mark. It showed Rome's leaders how dangerous concentrated slave populations could be and pushed them to tighten control over estates, plantations, and gladiator schools. Over time, Spartacus became more than a historical figure. Later writers, revolutionaries, and artists turned him into a symbol of resistance against oppression. Plays, novels, and films reimagined his motives, often casting him as a champion of universal freedom. Historically, there is no solid evidence that Spartacus planned to destroy slavery across the entire Roman world. Most likely, he wanted to escape Italy and lead his followers to safer lands. But in some ways, what he intended matters less than what his story came to represent for people in many later centuries, from political activists to ordinary workers. Spartacus became a name that stood for the courage of the powerless. He was remembered as proof that those who seem to have no voice can still shake an empire, even if only for a brief time.
More than 2,000 years after Spartacus died, the roads where his army once marched are almost empty.
And the great arenas of Rome are only broken stone and shadows. His revolt did not erase slavery from Rome.
Yet for a brief, terrifying moment, a man who owned nothing forced the strongest state of his time to feel afraid of the people it called property.
Spartacus proved that an empire built on deep inequality can tremble when the lowest ranks decide they have nothing left to lose.
That is why later generations turned him into a symbol
For rebels, workers, and ordinary people.
Spartacus became a word for courage from the bottom up. The courage to stand together against power, even when the odds look impossible.
From the dust and blood of the Gladiator arena to the final stand in the hills of southern Italy, the spirits of the past walk among us now, a silent reminder of the price of glory.
It shows how far bravery and desperation can push human beings, and how heavy the hand of an empire can be when it strikes back.
Yet the most haunting part is this. Spartacus lost the war, but he won something the legions could not take.
Long after his body disappeared into the chaos of battle, his name kept moving through history.
A reminder that even in chains, people can imagine freedom. And sometimes that dream alone is enough to shake the world for a moment.
Subscribe, like, share. Thanks for watching.